There are 7 steps required to attract investment to First Nation lands: vision, planning, legal framework, administrative systems, borrowing, construction, and investment. The FSMA institutions provide supportive services in each step along this process. The first step is the vision. This starts in the community. Each community has its own process for articulating and implementing its vision. A common method is agreeing on a land use plan and economic objectives. It may be about creating jobs. It may be about business opportunities. It may be about improving local services and infrastructure. It might be a specific project. The next step is planning to implement the vision. This includes at least a land use plan demonstrating how the land will be zoned to meet community objectives. A project plan that includes an economic plan that explains how the proposed project will attract investment. A fiscal plan forecasting costs and revenues to the First Nation government for the proposed development. A capital plan about infrastructure requirements that includes an assessment of engineering, environmental, and cost considerations. And a capital financing plan that explains how the infrastructure will be paid for, including local revenues, reserve funds, contributions from other governments, and borrowing. The fiscal institutions will help First Nation planning with accredited courses in capital and capital finance planning and advisory services for project plans and financial plans. As the saying goes, there's nothing more nervous than $1 million. Investors require certainty. First Nations seeking investment must pass and implement laws that give investors comfort. For example, the West Bank First Nation has over 20 laws to create this necessary legal framework. The fiscal institutions can help First Nations establish some of the required legal framework. The FNTC provides FSMA First Nations with model laws to quickly fill in the legal gaps that investors need and taxpayers want. Many of these model laws are listed on this slide. The FMB will provide a model financial administration law to give investors confidence in the First Nation financial system. To improve the First Nation credit rating, the FNTC and FNFA will provide a model borrowing law and interim financing law. Legal frameworks must be implemented by responsive administrations to provide information and confidence to investors. First Nation administrations cannot afford to be 4 to 6 times slower than other jurisdictions if they want to attract investors. They have to respond at the speed of business. Each borrowing First Nation must have their financial management systems certified by the FMB. The FMB will support these First Nations with training and advisory services during the process. The tax administrators from borrowing First Nations are expected to complete the accredited certificate in First Nation tax administrations, and they are encouraged to take the accredited certificate in applied First Nation economics. If requested, the FNTC will also provide support for project planning based on its 20 years of experience. Almost all local governments in Canada use debentures or long-term financing to pay for part of their infrastructure requirements. The FNFA approach is modeled on the debt pooling system used by local governments in British Columbia. This is the best practice because 1. It generates a higher credit rating so participants pay lower interest rates. 2. FNFA repayment periods can be as long as 30 years. 3. These debentures are secured by local revenues and there are no collateral requirements. And finally, the processing time for loans is shorter than other methods. Once the First Nation has its infrastructure financing in place, infrastructure construction begins. The legal and administrative framework to support the construction includes 1. The FNFA will provide interim financing to support construction cash flow requirements. 2. Building, engineering, and environmental codes and systems as required by FNTC standards. 3. Engineering and building approval processes using certified professionals. And 4. A construction tendering process that only involves bonded contractors as required by FMB guidelines. With available lands that offer investors certainty, quality infrastructure, and a responsive administration, the First Nation will attract investors. With greater investment, the First Nation local revenues will increase. This will lead to more employment, improved community services, and more fiscal independence. These are the shared objectives of the FSMA institutions and FSMA First Nations. This is the virtuous circle of healthy communities.